Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Irene Farley, Director of Education for the Dibble Institute, and accompanying me today are Kathy Guidry, our webinar organizer. Hi, Kathy.
Hi, good afternoon.
And Janet Posmentier, today's featured speaker on why teens hook up. Before we begin, I'd like to point out a few housekeeping tips for you. Should you experience any audio difficulties during this broadcast, and that is audio on your computer, please note the phone number that's listed here on your telephone. It is also listed on your link that got you here on your computer. You can listen both on your phone and watch the webinar if you need to at the same time. We invite your participation today, and that can be done in several ways. Janet will ask several poll questions that you can answer directly on your screen at the time that the slide comes down on your screen. Also, there'll be an opportunity for you to ask questions or make comments in the chat or in the question box. If you look at your control panel on your screen, there is a question box. There's an arrow there. You can open it up and place a question in there, and Kathy will receive that and make sure that we will either direct or answer that directly at the time, or it will be referred to later at the end of the broadcast during the Q&A time. So there will be time for that. We're going to record this session, and it will be available on our website within 3 business days. The Dibble Institute is a secular, nonprofit organization dedicated to equipping young people with the skills and knowledge they need to develop healthy romantic relationships now and for their future. Charlie Dibble, our founder, and there's a picture here with his wife Helen, was an aeronautical engineer who in his retirement years was dedicated to working with young people. In doing so, he became well aware of the emotional challenges to their long-term well-being. This became most evident when in the early 90s at his grandniece's wedding, he heard her say, "Oh, Uncle Charlie, this is just my first wedding." Well, you have to realize this was the time the divorce rate was reaching its peak, and this response very much concerned Charlie. He had heard many painful stories from the youth he worked with following their own parents' relationship issues. Charlie was concerned with the decreasing models of healthy relationships teens had to emulate. So to make a long story short, Charlie quickly realized little was being done to address the development of skills needed to form successful, healthy relationships. In 1996, with the cooperation of fellow business colleagues, educators, and friends, he founded the Dibble Fund, now known as the Dibble Institute.
Excuse me, Irene, I'm sorry. If you could just speak up a little bit. I'm not sure if it's because we have so many on today, but some are having a little difficulty hearing.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you for that.
There you go.
I appreciate it.
I apologize.
Charlie's vision was to have accurate, unbiased, and timely research-based information available for you. We pride ourselves in remaining true to Charlie's vision. And in keeping with that, we have today's webinar. And I'd like to introduce Janet to you. Janet Posmentier is an award-winning author, curriculum developer, trainer, and child advocate specializing in primary prevention programming. She has created and successfully implemented child abuse prevention, relationship and parenting education curricula for children, teens, and adults, and is known for her interactive presentations and engaging speaking style. Janet was also instrumental in establishing several children's advocacy organizations in the Houston, Texas area, and is co-author of a book on child development. She is past recipient of the Unsung Hero Award from Children at Risk and the former Texas Association for the Education of Young Adolescents Trainer of the Year. Currently, Janet enjoys traveling for the Dibble Institute as an outreach educator and serving as a consultant to several nonprofit organizations. I am so happy to present Janet to you today. And with that, welcome, Janet, and hopefully everything is all set for you.
Well, thank you so much, Irene, for the wonderful introduction. I'm just going to transfer the screen over, and hopefully that will work, and everybody can see it.
Okay, Janet, if you'll also, while you're doing this, this will give us a chance. I'm getting a lot of comments, I think, from people on the telephone that heard, they were hearing things well and now not. And I just would like to say to everyone to try to hang up and dial in again if you're on the phone, because there's nothing that I see on our end that seems to be a problem. So there's nothing I'm doing or any of the presenters are doing. It just may be a connection. So
it might be they have to listen in on the phone.
Well, that's where they're having the problem, Irene. So anyway, I'm getting now that the sound is coming back to those that are on the phone. So I'm sorry, just to let y'all know, we'll do our best around this. So Janet, please begin.
Thank you. Kathy and Irene, thank you. Is everybody seeing my screen?
Yes, it looks great.
Great. Okay. Well, let's start out by taking a quick look at who's in the room today. We had a lot of people who signed up for this webinar from an incredible variety of professions, everything from classroom instructors to school social workers and nurses to pregnancy prevention and teen outreach people. We have CASA volunteers, we have policy and health professionals, and most importantly, we have my daughters on the phone today. So let's get started. As professionals, many of us who work with teens are often dismayed when turbulent relationships and untimely parenthood derail the teens from a path to a promising future. And you know only too well how our teens are often pressured to hook up and are unaware of how to make healthy decisions about their love lives. All of us want teens to be smart about their love lives so they don't get involved in unhealthy or dangerous situations or become teen parents. And we also want them to get smart about their love lives so they can all end up in good relationships like my older daughter and her boyfriend here. So we're going to start out today with a short poll question, which Kathy's going to put on the screen for us so you'll know how to respond. So here's the question. I want you to think back and rate the level of sexual involvement of your first date using a 1 for no sexual involvement to 5 for heavy-duty sexual involvement, or if there's something in between, that's fine too. So 1 for no involvement, 5 for heavy-duty sexual involvement, or anything in between.
And I will let you know, too, just some technical things that as the slides change, there just may be a little bit of delay that sometimes happens. So if you'll take your mouse and you click in on your answer on the screen, then we'll be able to tally these. I know some of you are trying to type in the question box. So just take your mouse, and I'm going to give you all a few more minutes now, or seconds rather. Okay, I think we've about got everyone voting, so I'm going to share this with you. And as you can see, it looks like most everyone put number 1, no sexual involvement, just no kissing or anything. A few, 31%, did number 2, and then 8% did number 3. And of course, we had 1 and 2 that had a few other 4 and 5. So those are the answers, Janet.
Okay, thank you, Kathy. All right, now let's move on and let's take it to what's going on with the teens today and rate the level of sexual involvement of the teens that you work with, what you think the level of sexual involvement is on their first date, using a 1 for no sexual involvement, and a 5 for heavy-duty sexual involvement, and again, anything in between. Again, this is for the teens that you work with, what you think the level of sexual involvement is for them. 1 with none, and 5 for a lot on their first date.
Okay, I'm going to give a few more seconds. I love the participation we're getting with the questions. It helps set the stage for you, Janet.
Well, you know, when you talk about sex, it seems like everybody wants to participate at some level.
There you go. All righty, I'm going to get ready to share this with everyone.
Thank you.
And look, it looks like actually the highest percentage is 55% at level 3. Then we've got 6% at the heavy duty. And then it goes on down 14% at number 4 or level 4, and then 26% at level 2, and none at the level 1, or 1%, I guess, at level 1.
Okay. What did we get for level 5 again?
We got 6%.
6%
You
for
see
level
that?
5. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you so much, everybody, for participating. Thank you, Kathy, for helping us to understand the results. Well, I kind of anticipated that you would think that the teens today are having a lot more sexual involvement a lot sooner than a lot of us did. And what I want to think about today is, really, are their relationships that different than ours? Many of us come from generations that had what we called one-night stands. Are those the same as hooking up? And if not, how are they different? So today we're going to look at 3 main points. First of all, what is hooking up? How do we define it? What are some of the information we already know about it? What don't we know? We're going to look at, as our second point, relations or relationships. What do teens really want? And the third thing we're going to look at is helping teens to be able to achieve healthy relationships, if indeed that is what they would like to have. So we're going to start out with another little question here. And the question is, what is hooking up? So we need to all be on the same page, and I'd like for you all, Kathy's going to put a poll up again on the screen. There's 3 choices that you have as to what hooking up means to you. Is it making out? Is it oral sex? Or is it intercourse? Please pick one of those 3 for your answer.
Okay, I'm going to give everyone a few seconds more to vote. Looks like we're getting really good participation again, which is great. Okay, I'm going to share this with you. It looks like 70% say intercourse, 49% making out, and 23% oral sex.
Okay, great. Thank you all again for participating. I wish I could ask the question, how many of you were frustrated by that little poll? Because I deliberately forced you to give an answer. And if you wanted to say, well, it really could be all 3, then you would have been correct, because actually hooking up is a deliberately vague expression, and it can be making out, it can be intercourse, or it could be anything in between. The most important element, however, is that the sexual activity is occurring outside of a relationship, and there's no expectation that the relationship will continue or a promise that a romance will ensue. It's actually replaced traditional dating on college campuses and has also become prevalent in our general population culture. The hookup script kind of reverses the sexual norm. In hooking up, the pair becomes sexual first before emotional intimacy or relationship is established. There's really a clear understanding that the encounter is supposed to be free from any expectations for further contact, and it's designed to avoid the possibility of commitment. However, hooking up is still the primary pathway to a potential romantic relationship.
Janet, excuse me. Janet.
What are our teens today saying about, yes, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
I think we lost you for a minute, and some other folks are losing you. If you'll just kind of try to speak a little louder, I think that might help.
Okay. I'm sorry. We were talking about how hooking up can be anything from making out to sexual intercourse and everything in between. It's a deliberately vague term, and that it's kind of become almost a cultural norm among young people today. I'm hoping everybody can hear me now. And we're going to be looking at what some of our teens are telling us about what they think about relationships today. In this first drawing, you see this teen has drawn some pictures of money and says relationships today are like money. They pass quickly through your hands. There are too many idiots out there trying to fake it. They're kind of counterfeit people or counterfeit relationships. And the relationships are not as valued or worth as much as it used to be, just like our currency system. Here's another one. This teen said relationships today are kind of like cars driving in the fast lane. They start out fast and then they end fast. So I'm kind of getting, if you look at these drawings as kind of symbolic of what teens are experiencing today and what they're trying to communicate today about relationships, is that they're probably not too satisfied with what's happening in their generation. So looking again at the whole idea about hooking up, and if they're the same as a first date, are they different from, for example, many of us who played spin the bottle when we were younger teens, or are they different from one-night stands of previous generations? We're going to start out by looking at some recent research. And the first group that we're going to look at is actually Generation Y, the Millennials, and the Millennials are the generation that are the young adults of today. They're usually in their early to late 20s or early 30s. And the reason we're going to look at them is because today's teens are looking to them to help navigate relationships, and we want to see what kind of examples this generation is setting for our teens today. So first of all, there's something very interesting going on in the United States today. The median age for first marriage is now the highest in the United States history, with the age 28.7 for men and 26.5 for women of first marriage. Now, considering that young people start puberty a lot earlier than previous generations, some young women start puberty as early as 8 or 9 years old, and they're not getting married, let's say, until they're 26, 27 years old. There's a whole lot of time in between where people are having, because of their biological makeup, they're having urges for intimacy in a sexual way. So what are they doing in the meantime? Well, they're having sex outside of relationships very often. They don't necessarily need to be romantically involved. And again, we can call this either hooking up, we can call it a booty call, we can call it friends with benefits. There's a lot of different terms that people have for hooking up. So sex and dating has become divorced from committed relationships in many ways. We actually live in a culture that expects men and women to be sexually active in or out of a relationship, and thinks it's strange if they're not. About half of our millennials that are in a current relationship say they had sex with the person before they had a relationship with them, whereas in previous generations, when you slept with someone, it was usually the start of a relationship. However, for women, there's still a stigma for those who have too many partners or are always looking for a hookup. Whereas for a man, hooking up and friends with benefits simply means they have a person that likes them, is attracted to them, that they can be physical with, but it doesn't prevent them from finding other people. And also for both men and women who end up having sexual relationships sometimes with the same person over and over, even though there's no commitment, they feel it's safer instead of sleeping around with other people as far as sexually transmitted diseases. And finally, this generation, about 70% of them are living together before they become married. So what's going on with our teens? Well, by their 19th birthday, 7 out of 10 young people have had sex, and the average age of onset is 17. Although much of the current research has been done on college campuses, among younger adolescents, 70% of sexually active 12 to 21-year-olds. And let me underline sexually active. I don't want everybody to read that bullet and say that all teens 12 to 21 have had uncommitted sex. What it's saying is those who are sexually active, 70% of those have reported having uncommitted sex within the last year. 8 out of 10 of these first-time sexual relationships last 6 months or less, and the majority 3 months or less, and 1 out of every 4 are one-time affairs. As the previous slide said, the majority of sexually experienced teens say they wish they had waited. And 73% of girls wish dating were more common. So what's going on in general with hooking up? Well, here's some very interesting data. First of all, a recent Child Trends research brief and a study that was just cited in the Journal of Sex Research this past weekend found that between 1 out of 10 to 33% of our young adults, ages 18 to 25, have had sex within 4 weeks of knowing a partner, and 5% of them knew their partner only 1 day prior to having sex. And the most recent data suggests that between 60% and 80% of North American college students have had some sort of hookup experience. I think it's important to note that this does not necessarily mean that students are constantly jumping in and out of bed with different people. It could be for many that hooking up was just a one-time experience that was never repeated. Kind of perhaps for some a rite of passage being in their college years. 49%, almost half of those who had intercourse during a hookup never see the other person again. Now, the next statistic I found very interesting because a lot of people may think that hooking up is a really exciting, sexually satisfying type of experience. Well, the data says that 44% of the time, guys have an orgasm during a hookup, while girls only have orgasms 19% of the time. So the guys aren't doing so well, and the girls are really getting the short end of the stick. And the last statistic, which is really pretty amazing also, that 12% of women say that it's sometimes easier to have sex with a guy that they don't know than to make conversation with him. So,
Janet, could I stop you for a second? I've got a couple questions that I think may influence how people are listening to the webinar. One question we've got, and I'm sorry, they've come in very fast and furiously.
Okay, great.
One person wants you to clarify what are you speaking of when you use the term uncommitted or uncommitted relationship.
Speaking of what hooking up is generally defined as an uncommitted relationship. There's no romantic involvement. They are free to go out with other people. There's nothing saying you're my boyfriend, my girlfriend, or anything like that. There's no commitment whatsoever. It's simply a relationship for sexual purposes, and that's it.
Okay, and then another person is asking, what does it mean when you say that they're beginning a relationship?
Okay, let me look back on that real quick. Where did I say that? I'll have to get back on that one. I think that it meant that when they had a hooking up relationship, but I'll have to look back into my notes to make sure I answer that one correctly. So when we get to the end, if that's okay with you, I'll go back and I'll look and see where I said that, and if that is confusing, I apologize, and I'll check back on that for you.
Okay, thank you, Janet.
Okay. Thank you, Kathy. Okay, so why are teens hooking up? Well, there's several reasons. First of all, as we just talked about, we've got early puberty going on, later ages of marriage, and we have an era in which young adults are physiologically able to reproduce, but they're not psychologically or socially ready to settle down and begin a family. Another reason is there's a general acceptance of sex outside of marriage due to a lot of the societal changes that have occurred in the past 50 years once we had the advent of the birth control pill, women's rights, and other types of cultural revolutions in our society. So it's really kind of, people are not raising their eyebrows anymore like they used to. As far as the media, probably many of you said, well, that's the #1 reason why kids are doing that. Well, that could be a very, very strong influence on kids because the media suggests that uncommitted sex or hookups can be both physically and emotionally enjoyable and occur without strings. Many of you have probably seen some of the more popular movies on this subject, Hooking Up or No Strings Attached, and there's also some popular pro-hookup same-sex representations that have emerged in television series like Queer as Folk and The L Word. Now, studies are showing that kids who watch a lot of sexual content on TV are twice as likely to become pregnant. Now, some of you have probably read 17 magazine at some point in your adolescence. Well, recently, 17 magazine published a hookup handbook that featured hooking up tips. And the advertisement for the handbook says, hooking up with someone new can be fun but nerve-wracking. Get tips and tricks from experts and real girls so that you can feel confident about what you're doing. And please remember that this magazine's target consumer is girls age 12 to 18. So here's another reason: sexual identity and self-esteem. Often girls hook up to get boys to pay attention to them, not because they want sex. They don't really expect a relationship to come from it. They may hope that a relationship comes from it, but they don't really expect it. But they also don't want to be left out of the social scene. And that ties into this next bullet, peer pressure. Of course, that everyone's doing it or just wanted to get it over with, huge among adolescents. Alcohol. Now, we're talking teens, and we know in most states that alcohol is not legal until the age of 21, but all of you probably work with teens, and you know that does not at all prevent teens from alcohol and engaging in alcohol. And it almost always plays a key role in fueling the hookup scene by lowering normal inhibitions, because the drunker the person, the more likely he or she is to hook up and to have intercourse during the hookup. Condoms are much less likely to be used, and girls commonly report being raped while hooking up or having sex to appease an angry boy. Power and the need for love. This is an issue especially for girls who may think that the only way they can get and keep a boyfriend is with sex. And finally, you put it all together, you mix adolescent psychology, their eagerness for independence, control, and acceptance with biology, and sex can easily happen, especially when you throw in brains that haven't fully matured and develop the judgment and foresight necessary to predict consequences. And you add in a culture that disconnects sex from intimacy and implies that everyone's doing it, and it's not surprising that this phenomenon is occurring. So, what are the effects of hookups? Well, obviously, high-risk behavior, such as unprotected sex, can lead to sexually transmitted diseases in pregnancy. Also, there can be a lot of psychological effects of hookups. A number of studies have looked at regret with respect to hookups and have documented negative feelings that both men and women feel with respect to hookups after having casual sex. In one really large study of almost 2,000 undergraduate students, they found that about 1/3 of them felt embarrassed, about 1/4 of them reported emotional difficulties, about 1/5 of them experienced a loss of respect, and about 10% reported difficulties with a steady partner. I thought that was interesting, kind of implied that people are hooking up, if they are having maybe a committed relationship, they might be engaging in hookups outside of the committed relationship as well. Mental distress. In the study I just told you about that was cited in the Journal of Sex Research last week, they found that there were higher levels of anxiety and depression and lower levels of self-esteem and happiness. One of the things that's interesting that I think we need to think about is we don't know yet if teens that are engaging in hookups are doing so because they are feeling anxiety and depression and low feelings of self-esteem, or if teens are engaging in hookups and as a result they are having the mental and emotional consequences. It's unknown at this time.
So Janet,
but a lot of these studies, yeah,
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I do have a question. So are you saying that hooking up may be related to sexual assault?
In some cases, there have been reports that some girls are, it can turn into a sexual assault, yes. That's from the research that I found.
Great.
In some cases, yes. Okay, thank you. So a lot of these studies have looked at young college-age adults, 18 to 25, And there's not that much information yet about the effects on teens, but what we do know so far is that adolescents who engage in early sexual behavior experience higher levels of stress and depression than do their non-sexually active peers. And again, we don't know if that's why they're engaging in hookups or they engage in hookups and then they have these overwhelming emotions, because more teenagers of both genders are new to romantic intimacy. And that's their developmental stage where they start having relationships and romances. And they might find themselves overwhelmed with unexpected emotions when the casual encounters don't typically lend themselves to creating real relationships. A lot of teens will say they don't really, want to get involved with anybody, but in the back of their minds, they probably do. And we're going to talk a little bit about that in the next slide.
Janet,
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
We've got
No,
just a
no
lot
problem.
of chatter over
So
here.
many. That's great. Thank
If we
you.
could go back to
Go ahead.
if we could go back to the last slide. When
Yes.
you're
Okay.
and can you clarify, when you mean teens, are you talking about male and females? Are the effects of these hookups, people
Yes.
want to know, we're talking about it can affect males in this way and females, right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Some studies have shown more of these effects in females than males, but a lot of studies have found the same levels in both males and females.
Okay.
It's interesting. It's just not all that much information out there, but so most of the studies build upon each other and find similar results, and some find slight differences. And again, because there's not that many studies, I'm just giving you the information that we know at this time.
Now, do any of these studies, are we assuming it includes teens of color and non-heterosexual youth, or is there any clarification in the studies that you used, is the question.
Well, the last study, the one that the Journal of Sex Research had, they had interviewed college students from over 30 different campuses, and they had almost 4,000 students that they studied. So my guess is, and again, I hadn't seen the details of that study other than what they found and how many they studied, that it would, if you're looking at 4,000 teen or young people, that it would definitely have quite a variety of people. But I can look back and I can, if you give me the person's name who wants that information, I can certainly find that information in greater detail.
And I will say that many of you are asking for specific research references. I am suggesting, Janet, that they email you directly, and it's janet@dibbleninstitute.org. We've got a number of people who want more sites on that, so I'm going to send them your way. So those of you that are asking that question, you know where to get it.
Great, thank you. And Kathy, the other thing I can do is when we post this up on our website in a few days, I can add a slide at the end that lists all of the citations so that people can look at it there as well.
Right, and we can put them on the website along with the archived webinar once you get the sites to me.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, so relations or relationships, what do teens really want? Do they really want these no strings attached relationships that get their sexual needs met? And if that's true, why would they want that? Are they really that different than we are? Well, actually, they're not. They're just like us. They want love, affection, and connection. But what's different about them is they feel that sex is the only way to obtain it. Often they feel that way. Or there's some reason that they feel that way, again, from all the reasons we cited that are influencing them. In one recent study, some 50% of those who hooked up did it to start a relationship, but just 12% succeeded, and the resulting relationship usually lasted an average of only 4 months. So many do fail to achieve what they set out to do and then feel used. Now, another thing is that sex does improve intimacy. It releases oxytocin, that's the hormone that promotes bonding and trust. However, although both sexes get the oxytocin surge, it's suppressed to some degree in men by testosterone. That means that women are bonding more intensely than men from a physiological standpoint, and that's why women who have sex with jerks and then find themselves developing feelings of attachment for them, even though they don't particularly like them. So, teens want to know, how to build a healthy, committed relationship. And what you see on the slide in front of you is what we call a relationship pyramid that kind of helps them understand exactly how to do that. So if you look at the bottom, you're looking at starters and ingredients that lay a positive foundation. These are the qualities or characteristics you would want when starting a relationship. Now in the middle, those are the qualities that would describe a deepening and developing relationship that's getting more serious. And at the top, you see mature love. That's where people are really investing in a future together. And here you would see the qualities that are so important that they need the other layers to support them. So now it's your turn to tell us what you think about how this relationship pyramid should look. What I'd like you to do in your, I think it's on the right-hand side of your screen, there's a question box where you can type in one word that you think could go at the bottom of the pyramid that describes qualities or characteristics that you would want in starting a relationship. For example, at the bottom of the pyramid there, do you think this would be a good place to put shared interests? So please just type in one word, and then Kathy will call out to us some of the words that you type in.
Yeah, we've got all kinds of things. We've got friendship and trust, communication, fun. Got a lot of trust and respect and communication, a lot of talking. And obviously there's going to be probably some attraction and friendship.
Wonderful. Wonderful. I think we can all agree those are great starters and ingredients that would lay a positive foundation. So for the sake of time, we're going to skip the middle part of the pyramid and go up to the top. And now, please type in one word that you think should go at the top of that relationship pyramid that describes qualities or characteristics of mature love. For example, would sex fit here? Go ahead and type in one word, and Kathy will tell us what you think.
We've got intimacy and marriage, commitment, trust, sex, mutual respect, dedication, being exclusive, physical intimacy, sacrificial, love that faithfulness, lots of different things, sacrifice, grace. Oh, I like that one too, and companionship, accountability, a lot of give and take, love for Christ, marriage, finances.
Wow, that's fabulous. Thank you so much. And these are all the things that we would want our young people to understand on how to develop a healthy relationship and kind of the order in which you would want it to develop. And as you see, at the very base of the pyramid are incredibly important things that lay that foundation so that you can get to all that good stuff you just mentioned at the top. But in the real world and in the world of picking up, it kind of looks like that. And obviously a pyramid that's upside down on its apex is not going to be a strong one, and it will probably very quickly fall apart because perhaps the sex meant something to one person, but maybe not the other person. And if you just have a foundation of sex, who knows if you can communicate really well? Who knows if you've got common interests or can have fun together? Or if the person even feels like a friend to you, and forget commitment and trust. That may or might not ever develop if you don't have all the other things. So this is something kids really relate to. They see, I mean, anybody can look at that, and you can demonstrate with a model how that can fall apart. And they truly understand, for once maybe in their lives, because maybe many of them have never had any examples of the first pyramid that we saw, what a healthy relationship really looks like. So teens want to know what love is and what it's not. Now here you see a slide called the love chemicals that talks to us a little bit about the difference between love and infatuation. This is really hard. So many of us have difficulty understanding the difference between love and infatuation, and there's a reason for that. And it's really easy to tell people, oh, take your time, go slow, don't slide into anything, don't, rush into it. But in fact, this can be really challenging because you've got chemicals in your brain that are activated when there's a strong attraction. Your brain becomes saturated with amphetamine-like neurotransmitters. You probably feel high almost in a way, and we call those love chemicals. So it's easy to see how those love chemicals can make you feel like you're in love, even though what you're most likely feeling is strong infatuation. And I think this diagram is a helpful way for teens to understand that infatuation, you see the word fat in the middle of infatuation, it means that you're fat with love chemicals. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're in love. It means you've got a bunch of chemicals swirling around, kind of like in this pot here where you see all this boiling water is going on. That's kind of like what the love chemicals are like. They can really prevent you from seeing your partner clearly for, believe this or not, 3 to 6 up to 9 months. But when the pot boils over, or you turn off the heat and the water cools down, you're finally able to see what's in the pot. You can look down and see clearly. And you could really see also, when you talk about all those hormones simmering down after 3, 6, or 9 months, you can really see clearly who your partner is. But if you've been intimate with this person the whole time, and now you don't really like what you see, you've gone pretty far down the road, and it can be very challenging to break up the relationship. Another thing that young people really want to understand is, what are the 3 sides of love? This is a model by Robert Sternberg, and it helps us to understand there are really 3 dimensions to love. Chemistry pretty much gets things going, but a deep friendship and trust and commitment can make the relationship truly loving. It's important for teens to learn about how couples will always need to work on balancing the 3 sides so that they can have a strong, loving, and lasting relationship. Now, kids also want to know what good sex is, and many people think that intimacy just means sex, but it's actually so much more. As you see on this slide here, there's actually 6 parts to intimacy, and sex can fool people into thinking that they are close, but the 6 types of intimacy reflected here help teens understand the full spectrum of intimacies that need to be in place for a healthy relationship to develop and be sustained. Teens need to know that it takes time for these intimacies to develop into a relationship. I just spoke with a friend of mine this morning. Her name is Megan, and she said that when I talked to her about hooking up, and she said, well, it's kind of, she called it an empty social calorie. She said that hooking up is, sex is like an empty social calorie, just like chips and soda. They fill you up momentarily, but it doesn't have, chips and soda don't have any lasting ingredients and nutrients. Neither does hooking up. It's not going to fill you up and give you all these things that you see here, your 6 parts of intimacy. So how does all this relate to good sex? Well, there really actually is a big payoff. If people pace themselves and they take time to develop a relationship and establish an emotional connection before they have sex, it helps both males and females to experience better sex. So that's a big benefit. So here's our third last point. We can really help kids achieve these healthy relationships. These are the things that they want. I've had the great pleasure and honor of teaching healthy relationship education curricula to kids in middle and high schools. And when I have taught these classes, almost every time I've had so many kids come up to me and say that this is the most important class that they've ever taken. Not just because they're all interested in this kind of stuff, but they realize that the choices they make today can impact all the choices and decisions they will or maybe will not be able to make in the future, and how healthy relationships is not just about romantic relationships, but it's about work relationships and social relationships and all of that. So they really, really enjoy these classes. So why should we teach them about healthy relationships? Well, no matter what one's sexual orientation is, all teens and, of course, adults need healthy relationship education because of what we talked about, how our media gives us messages that jumping in and out of bed with people is a good thing. We also have going on in our society today a high divorce rate, and where a lot of young people grow up not knowing both of their parents in the same home, and there's a huge disconnect often, especially that takes a toll on dads and their ability to have lasting relationships with their children. Kids don't really have so much of an understanding of how sexual relationships can impact their future dreams. And many of them, as I mentioned earlier, are growing up in homes where they really have never had the opportunity to see healthy relationships modeled between the adults in the home, so they don't know what that looks like. But ultimately, the price being paid by both boys and girls in the hookup culture is that no one is getting any practice at relationships. Dating has always been a way of preparing for eventual marriage. teaching couples skills such as trust and sharing and generosity, disagreement and compromise. And relationships teach us how to love another person. They teach us what to seek in a mate and what to avoid. So we have to consider what is going to be the long-term effect on the divorce rate as young people enter marriage with little or no relationship experience. So how do we do that? Well, we're really good in our fast food society, our quick fix society, of wanting to solve problems like this in a really quick and easy way by saying, just say no. And that is always a very positive, no, well, it's not a positive message, it's a good message, because we, of course, want kids to be able to say no to things that could be risky or dangerous to them. However, we're not empowering them because we're not giving the information that they need to be able to say yes. So we need to help them learn through relationship education a positive model for committed and healthy relationships. So what do they learn? Well, I've already in the webinar shown you several things that the Dibble Institute curricula offer to help young people learn about relationships, such as love, differences between love and infatuation, the 3 sides of love, the healthy relationship pyramid. And then here's another one that I love, this little diagram where you see the person on the sled or whatever that is going down the mountain. And if you notice carefully, it looks like a he. He's got some blindfolds on, and the person holding on to him going down for the ride also has blindfolds on. And they're just hoping that they're not going to run into anything. But for a variety of reasons, as you know, teens get involved in relationships that they either regret or find difficult to get out of. They slide into them like this diagram does with their eyes kind of closed. And relationship education programs help teens identify danger signs of sliding into relationships and learn how to consciously and deliberately decide whether or not to enter a relationship. So here's another thing that teens can learn in healthy relationship education programs, the 7 principles of smart relationships. You can take a quick look at these, and I'm going to move on and show you a little bit about an activity that we do in one of the Dibble curricula, kind of modified for purposes of a webinar, where we have actual situations that teens themselves have written, real-life situations, and then we give these scenarios to the kids, and then they will decide which of the smart relationships principles it matches. So for example, here's one that says, sex means a lot to her. She's probably thinking it means we'll be together forever. Hey, I haven't thought beyond next week, and my values on sex, well, when I get what you can, whenever you can. So which principle of smart relationships is this? Well, paying attention to values. Now, if it's okay with the partner here, then, they're on the same wavelength with values. But if it's not, then that's something that partner will have to reconsider whether or not he or she wants to continue in that relationship. Here's another one. She's coming on to other guys just to try and make me jealous. I told her I knew what she was up to. I'm not going to play games. Well, this person has kind of figured out this isn't a smart way to be in a relationship. And that goes back to one of those 7 principles, not to play games, pressure, or manipulate somebody. So we've got these great programs. They feel good. The kids love them. That's not good enough. It's got to work. And one of the privileges of being involved with this organization is I've been able to learn how these programs have been evaluated. And they undergo rigorous evaluation, so much so that several of them have been listed in SAMHSA's National Registry of Evidence-Based Programs and Practices, which is the kind of gold standard for research showing that something works. So what we know about the Dibble programs is that these programs help the students' abilities to resist sexual pressure, and they can also significantly delay the onset of sexual activity. And then in my own, on a practical level, in my experience teaching the programs, universally, the kids love the programs because it's what they want to learn, and it's given to them in a way that they like to learn. And furthermore, whatever your setting, these programs can be easily integrated. So we looked today at what hooking up was all about. What do teens really want? Is it relations or relationships? I think we can agree that they really do want relationships, but they just don't know how to get there. And there are ways that we can help them achieve these healthy relationships. Now, going back to our first activity, that first date, do you think now that if teens had healthy relationship education before going out on their first date, and I'm putting quotes around that, do you think that their experience would be different? Would your answers be different had the teens that you work with had all this information? Would you still give them the 3s, the 4s, and the 5s back on that first activity? Now, if you're already teaching relationship skills to the teens that you work with, I really hope that this webinar has been helpful. And thank you so much on behalf of all of us at the Dibble Institute for your commitment and the hard work that you're putting in with our kids. But for those of you who haven't yet started to teach this information to teens, we really hope that the webinar today has inspired you to teach these easily integrated relationship skills to the teens that you work with. And I want to thank all of you so much for joining us to help teens get smart about their love lives. And now it's your turn. You've had a little bit of opportunity for questions and feedback. Please type in whatever other questions or feedback you have. I think we have a few more minutes before it's time to say goodbye.
Okay. Janet, I do have a few questions. I'm sorry. Just let me look through here. One question is, where are some other places, since a lot of states are dropping, fax programs in the schools? Can you tell us some other places from your experience working with Dibble that a teen might get some of this information? We have a mother of some teens on our call today, on our webinar today, and she's interested where else she could find this information for her teens.
Well, that's a great question, and I think wherever teens are, you can bring this program. After-school programs, they can be in health classes, they can be in Girl or Boy Scouts, they can be in, for kids who are involved in the juvenile facilities, they can be there. Kids with special needs, they can be in those programs. Irene, I know you've got a lot of other ideas of where these programs have been taught and integrated, so I'll turn it back over to you.
Well, I think you've mentioned just about all of them, Janet. Faith groups, youth organizations are a wonderful place where teens are looking for these types of programs and these answers. So anywhere that teens gather, and if you have that trusted adult ability to have someone lead them who will give them.
Hello?
Kathy, I can hear you.
Okay.
I lost it.
I think we've lost
Irene.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Yeah. Okay, I'm back.
Oh, there you are.
I don't know what happened.
Another question we have, is there any research that you saw, Janet, that says that if one of the person in the hooking up is more experienced, is that person usually considerably older than the other? And is there a particular, is it the male or the female that tends to begin this hooking up experience?
I think that's a great question. In the research I was looking at, I didn't see anything that indicated that, but I think it brings up a very good question as far as an age differential and where the legal definition of sexual abuse comes in. That's something that definitely should be further explored.
Okay. Which of the materials that we have, Janet, and I think you've taught quite a few of them to people who actually teach teens, which of our materials do you suggest might be a good place for a parent to kind of start these kind of communications about hooking up and whatnot with, say, a 12 and a 13-year-old boy? I know we have some things on our websites for parents. Can you speak to that, or you and Irene?
Yeah, I think, Irene, I know you probably have some good ideas. I think definitely looking at the website and seeing what materials are there, but I know that our Healthy Choices, Healthy Relationships curricula is designed for a young teen middle school age teen, but one of my personal favorites is the things to know before you say go cards, where you can sit, either your child could sit by themselves or you could sit with them, and it asks some very deep questions about relationships and the nature of them. There's about 70 different cards on everything from trust to intimacy to values, about people who you would want to be or not be in a relationship with, and I think it would have wonderful conversation starters between a parent and a child. And a parent can modify and choose the cards that they think are most appropriate for a younger child. So Irene, what do you think?
Well, you know, Janet, you bring those cards up, and actually those cards are great for car trips, automobile trips, because you have that contained audience, and great discussion can happen, especially if you're hauling teens, your own children and their friends. So you could have some really good, interesting discussions while you're spending time in the car.
That's
and
a great
that's
idea.
the things to know before you say go. I think that was a really good tool to use in the home.
And I just do want to say, because there are still some questions about when we talk about lesbians and gays and the queer community, that Dibble supports healthy relationships for all teens. And the research a lot of the research sometimes is targeted toward male and female just because there may not be as much research out there. But there are some comments and questions here that I'm getting, but I want that to be very clear to all of you, that all teens deserve healthy relationships. And all teens need to be taught healthy relationships.
And a lot of our, especially I'm thinking of the scenarios that Janet mentioned in the 7 principles of smart relationships. There are a few examples of scenarios that relate to same-sex couples, but so much of that can be modified to reflect your particular group that you're working with. And because good, healthy relationship skills relate to all people at all ages, but our program specifies those scenarios and situations for young people. So, you know, it really will fit wherever teens gather.
Okay.
How are we doing, Kathy? Anything else? And we have just a few minutes
left. I think we just have
any
a
more
few minutes. There was one question. Let me just look here. I'm sorry, we've got so many, and I will tell you all that we will answer them either individual emails or calls or whatnot, just so that we don't want anyone to go away not getting their questions answered. One thing that I think is a good question from Judy. She has asked, you know, if she presents this information to a group of students, do you, Irene and Janet, feel it would be better shared with a mixed group or with, you know, a group of boys separately from a group of girls, or is there really one answer to this, or does it depend on her particular students or her group of kids or teens?
Janet, do you have any sense of what your experience has told you?
That's a great question. I have always presented to mixed-sex classrooms and felt that everybody felt comfortable participating. But I'd be curious to hear about people who've just done same-sex classrooms, if they feel that there are advantages or disadvantages in just doing a same-sex. What about you, Irene? What's been your experience?
Well, I've heard the same thing in some research studies where same-sex groupings actually find that they're more comfortable in answering questions, but what's missing is they don't get the other side of the story. What is really, I think, beneficial to a mixed group is that you get an understanding of what the boys are thinking and how they're reacting to certain aspects, whereas you're just getting one side of the story when you have a homogeneous gathering. But, you know, a lot depends on the comfort level of the instructor and how well the group knows one another. I think It might be more difficult when they don't know one another, but as they get to know each other and the confidentiality that's groomed in that setting, and that's really important.
And Ari, I'm gonna, excuse me, I'm going to ask you one last question just because I think it's important for everyone to know where Dibble stands with this. And the question is, how would you or your program respond to a youth who is in a committed relationship but has no desire to get married, or an LGBT youth who may not be able to legally get married? Can you talk about what that committed relationship and how Dibble perceives that?
Well, I think if I could maybe start out with, I think the real strength of our programs is that we present and not preach the material, and we guide young people to make their own decisions, and hopefully we're guiding them towards what will be very successful choices for their future. And so it's going to have to be that, you know, a lot of great parents have kids who have made some pretty poor decisions, who have been great models. So there's not a whole lot you can do to really force anybody to do anything different. All we can do is educate and listen, be great listeners, and be there and be present for them. And I think that's having that trusted adult relationship that we really strive to help our young people create for themselves, where they will have somebody that they can talk to honestly and share with and journey with, and hopefully make the decisions that are right for them. Okay. That's about the best I can tell with
okay,
besides,
that sounds great.
Forcing them to do it.
Right. Well, Janet, if you want to continue with the slides so that we can end, and again, we will be in touch with you to finish answering the questions that we did not get to.
And thank you, Janet, for me, one of your most profound statements that sticks with me is the ultimate price being paid by both girls and boys in the hookup culture is that no one is getting any practice at healthy relationships. And I just think, oh, that really hit me. I think, oh, that's it, exactly. There is a purpose to their dating. Thank you again, and to everyone joining us today. We want to keep in touch with you, and we can do that through our website at www.dibbleinstitute.org. On that website, you'll find that you can sign up for our e-newsletter, and on that newsletter, it comes out once a month. You can have new and updated resources, funding opportunities, and so important are the monthly research findings that become available, where there'll be more information like what Janet presented today. There are also, we ask that you like us on Facebook and engage in our discussions on the Dibble Institute group pages at LinkedIn. And any questions that may come to mind after this broadcast may be sent to any one of us at relationshipskills@dibbleinstitute.org. And there are free sample lessons available on our website on all the program pages. There are sample lessons for each program, and there are evaluations of all our programs on each program page, and also any alignment to the national health standards or the FACTS teaching standards, national sexual education standards. That's all on our website along with the programs. And you can register for our next second Wednesday webinar, which is going to be held on August 14th, Managing Conflict, the 4 Communication Danger Signs.
And also,
go ahead. And there's also free shipping with anything that you should purchase within 30 days. Thank you. I must always forget that. Please use the code webinar at your checkout. There'll be a space that they'll ask for a promo code, and it's called webinar. We certainly have enjoyed your being with us this afternoon, and I'm sure this will lead to more stimulating discussion within your groups at the water cooler tomorrow. So we look forward to seeing you again next month. Please share our information with your colleagues, and we look forward again seeing you August 14th. This is Irene Barley, wishing everyone a success in your life through your healthy relationships. Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.